So I'm here this afternoon. I'm Peter Cook of Let's Reboot Britain. I have the privilege of talking with Nicola Tipton, who's a resident of Watford and whose MP is actually one of the better MPs insofar as he does reply to her. Good afternoon, Nicola.
Good afternoon.
Now, I believe you were a school teacher and now you're a grandparent, but you're also someone who's concerned about Brexit. Is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about your MP, Dean Russell, I believe he is.
Well, in all my dealings with him, he's been very kind and courteous. He always replies to his emails and he does seem genuinely concerned. Way back in, I think, probably May, he did grant me a 2-hour telephone interview. And not only did we discuss matters concerning Brexit, but he also was very interested in a personal problem that I had at the time, which he helped me with.
I mean, I don't want to put any MP on a pedestal, but just for a moment, 2 hours is a lot of their time, actually, and that is a big credit to him, because I know MPs that don't even reply to anyone. So we start with something good to say, and it sort of implies we're going to say something less good. But we're not really, but we want to ask him questions and call him to account. So I know you've prepared a series of questions, and one is about no deal Brexit. Do you want to say something about that?
Yes, I want to know, because he's always reassured me, that can you guarantee that there will not be a no deal Brexit? As you have assured me, there won't be on many occasions. There has been no mandate for this, and it wasn't what was promised in the election.
Yeah, and I'll resonate with that, and so that we'll sideswipe away from Dean. The problem here, as far as I'm concerned, is his boss, the big boss, Mr. Cummings, Mr. Johnson, has a track record of systematically changing his mind, or if we're talking crudely, lying. So, of course, we need a lot of reassurance here, don't we, about no deal? And we also know economically and socially that it's an absolute disaster. Plus COVID and all the rest of it. Are you in favour of getting any sort of deal, or what would you like anything considered at this time under?
Well, obviously, I voted against Brexit, and I would prefer that. But I certainly don't want to crash out at Christmas.
Okay, and considering where we are with the COVID crisis, which is contributing something like 11% GDP loss, what would you say to Dean now about the validity of Brexit at this time?
Well, I think it's pure madness in the times of not just a national, but a global crisis, pandemic, that we are rushing through and spending energy trying to deliver some kind of Brexit deal. And at the very least, I think the government should suspend what they're doing and leave it till a later date when at least we have sorted out the COVID crisis.
And as you know, in my parody Boris Johnson mode, I say that Corona crisis plus Brexit disaster equals a catastrophe.
Yeah, exactly. I agree.
A word that Boris ought to learn to use. So we implore Dean to talk to the boss and either give reassurance about no deal or persuade him of the absolute peril of rolling on with this catastrophe at this time.
Yeah. Can I just add that I really feel patronised as well by this slogan, let's get Brexit done, because everybody's had enough of it. Having enough of something, and I'm pretty fed up with it, to be honest, does not justify doing something that is reckless.
No, and I stood a candidate in the election, and in my territory, I found out that the truism that Boris didn't exactly win, Corbyn did lose. That wasn't mirrored across the nation, but nonetheless, it was a feature in where I was in Kent. So we can be jubilant about having 80 majority, but it was founded on someone's loss rather than a genuine gain. And of course, if you're in a shaky constituency, people are now starting to worry quite a lot about it. So the time to act is now. Let's move on to something a bit more local. I know you talked a little bit about Dean's good work locally in
Yes.
the hospital context. Tell us some more about that.
Yes, well, he has, throughout the crisis, he has voluntarily worked on the wards as a volunteer in Watford General Hospital. And he's also very committed to mental health issues. So I have a question, in the light of what happened last Sunday, I have a question for him concerning health. Obviously, I am concerned that if there was a deal with the US, that our NHS is up for grabs, even though we have been constantly told it's not on the table.
As the leader of Brexit, I would go a tad further to suggest that we're jumping out of the EU frying pan into Trump's fire, with all that goes with it. And Dido Harding's appointment as a failed telecoms exec and someone who's failed to deliver test and trace, it is the Reginald Perrin model of success through failure. So I think you're bang on there as well, that, you know, this is a political appointment. There was no selection process, no proper HR, no looking at options. For someone so senior, one should have at least considered some of the main protagonists and perhaps people with relevant experience. Or am I trying to put words into your mouth?
Well, my question was, what do you think of the sudden breaking up of Public Health England? And how do you feel about Dido Harding being appointed as head of the new body? Because I want to know what he actually feels, because he has demonstrated a concern for our national health system. And I'm very concerned about what will happen under her, with her track record, as you said.
In this particular case, Dean has a relevant platform of expertise and experience to draw upon.
Yeah.
So it's a reasonable question, actually. Just out of interest, though, what's your view on Dido Harding?
Well,
if it's sayable.
I just find it very difficult to believe in these days the justification behind many of the government's appointments, because it seems to me that we have the most inept and inexperienced cabinet that has ever, as far as I can remember, been in power. And then the appointment of her, and she just so happens to be married to a Tory MP and happened to be a friend of Dominic Cummings, etc., etc. She has messed up the track and trace, that is proven. And in all her previous kind of lives, you know, I don't see what qualification she has to lead up a body concerned with healthcare.
One could at least say she's consistent, though.
Pardon?
One could at least say she's consistent.
Oh, consistent. Yes. Yes.
All right. Okay. So a serious question, though. So we can put a funny gloss on it, but nonetheless, a serious question is, you know, from his perspective of having worked in the NHS,
yes,
we are headlong rushing into a sale of the NHS, which was not on the tin at the election.
No, and you know, they're still saying that is not what they're going to do.
Okay, so we move to an even more difficult question, and that's the mystery MP who was arrested recently for rape. I mean, what do you say?
Well, this concerns me very much as a woman, and very much because I've worked in the public and private sector as a teacher, and I think there are serious safeguarding issues here for people working in Westminster. And my question is, why is an MP arrested for rape being allowed to return to Parliament in September? This would not be the case with any other professionals. They would be suspended until proven guilty or otherwise. And if I was a woman working in the House of Commons, I would be particularly concerned that there aren't correct safeguards in place.
No, and there's two things I'll respond to you on that. That because these people are public figures, it's slightly different than if it were anyone else, insofar as we have the media scrutiny on them, and constant media scrutiny, whether we think that's good or bad. And there will be, come September, a kind of whodunit plot emerging. So, you know, the trouble is with not coming out with the truth, is everyone will be under suspicion, is one.
Yes.
I suppose it's a trivial point, but it's perhaps a non-trivial point.
No, I think that's important too.
Yeah, the other thing that occurs to me, I sometimes sit in with leave groups on social media, and they're discussing hanging at the moment. I mean, they are outraged, but I mean, whatever we think about that as well, which I don't have a hugely fond regard of, but nonetheless, they want to get the gibbet out. And, you know, so the trouble with not fessing up to this stuff is people find solutions, and particularly the alt-right and perhaps the alt-left, actually, also. The extremes find other solutions to these problems, even if they're only talking about them. But there are active conversations going on there about what to do about this mystery person. If that's a good reputational boost for the Tory party, I don't know what a bad one would be.
Yeah.
So, okay. So perhaps this seems a little lighter then to finish our conversation, but you mentioned Dominic Cummings, as has been mentioned for years, and, you know, what about Dominic?
Yes. Well, I still can't understand why he is holding the position that he is. And my MP has consistently said that he didn't agree with what he did personally, but has accepted the excuse, you know, of looking after his child, etc., etc. But I still think this man should be sacked because of not only because of that, but because I think he is suspect in a number of other things as well. Not least, we don't really know why he worked in Russia in the 1990s.
We are beginning to learn, but we don't know your point. Yeah. And it has been relatively well proven that Dominic Cummings, you know, mistake, or whatever we want to call it, his decision to drive to Durham to get his eyesight checked, take his wife some beauty spots, incarcerate his child for hours without a toilet break. All of that was the tipping point as to justify other people doing equally stupid things. And people have been on the record of saying, well, Dom did it. And that tipped us over. That has serious consequences for, well, let's be plain, for people dying.
And also, personally, for myself, I was very careful during the whole of lockdown. And as a person in my 60s, I really do not want to get this virus.
No, me the same. And I behaved impeccably. I now wonder whether I was foolish to do that. Of course, we carry on because we must. But yes, and it isn't, again, the case of saying, well, he's a human being like the rest of us, which was one of the defence strategies used. Unfortunately, if you take a position at the top, and I work as a management consultant with some serious companies, leaders must be better than the people they lead. This is the problem.
Lead by example.
So leading by example really matters there. So I'm sorry, Dominic, you know, the game is up. The Russia report is out. It's been heavily redacted. But quite simply, the rules were broken. Many other people voluntarily stepped down in Scotland and other places, chief scientific advisors. Why are we still there? And coming back to Dean Russell, I believe he wrote you a really good letter about this, and as indeed many Tory MPs did, including my own, said they personally disagreed with it, but the caveat was, but we've got to carry on. I mean, so lots of empathy, which is welcome. But if I was giving a school report on Dean Russell right now, it'd be 7 out of 10, could do a little bit better. So coming to, therefore, the conclusion, you know, what could Dean Russell be doing better for his constituents in the local area?
Well, I think what would be really valuable, because I'm sure I'm not the only one who is very concerned about what is happening in Britain at the moment, if he could hold some kind of public meeting, now that that is possible with social distancing, preferably outside even, where his constituents could ask him questions like I'm doing now, to get some answers on these issues and others. For instance, the agricultural bill and the Russian report as well.
And bearing in mind that public meetings aren't always well attended, so you don't need a massive place. Watford Town Football Club would be a great outdoor venue, wouldn't it, with a PA system? And one could shout on the pitch. I'm not suggesting that in a serious way, but there are ways and means to do this COVID safe. That's the point.
Yes.
And meetings aren't always huge events, so it's possible. Yes. It isn't a fantasy.
Yeah. And it might also stop him, because I know he receives hundreds of emails. It might also help answer, questions in the wider community, rather than having to keep repeating himself.
Okay. So, Nicola, thank you so much for your candid thoughts and quite difficult thoughts on difficult subjects. And I hope that Dean will respond in kind and do what he should do in a representative democracy to reinstate democracy, rather than simply rely on letters, which are, as you say, demanding on his time. If he's given you 2 hours, he could save a lot of time by giving you people a decent amount of time. And we see that he's a decent MP and he's trying to do his best. So we call him to do a little bit more. So, Nicola, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. You're welcome.